We've all heard it a million times. We've all heard that you need to give your best stuff away for free, that you need to add value over and over and over again, continue to just give your best stuff out and yada, yada, yada. And yeah, there's some truth to that. We do want to give out great content. We do want to add value. But one of the things that I kind of stand against is this generalized information that we just blindly follow. And one of those things that there's two of them really. It's trust, build the know, like, and trust. And that's so generalized that no one really tells us how to build the know, like, and trust or what that really means. But the second thing that we hear all the time is add value to your audience, give out as best stuff you can for free, give out your, over and over again. And they just keep hearing add value, add value, add value. But what no one really talks about is what do they mean when they say add value? And everyone just starts to assume it means deliver information. But there are so many ways to add value to your audience through content and messaging in your communication that I personally have never heard anyone talk about it. And what I want to do in this episode is I want to dive into 5 ways that we have been able to add value into our audience's life, into your life, without delivering more tutorials and more how-to information. So if you're ready for this, well, buckle up because we're about to dive in. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about five different ways you can add value without using education or information or tutorials inside of your content strategy, inside of your webinars, inside of your communication, ads, whatever it may be. And again, this is a really important episode for me because if you're new here, which I'm assuming a lot of you probably are not, you know that one of the things that I kind of stand against is this idea or this narrative that we've been fed that says that we need to give our best stuff away for free, that we need to continue adding value by giving out information. And I think a lot of people just regurgitate that advice over and over again, which is like, give your best stuff away for free. Or we hear add value, just add value, add value, add value. And then no one ever really tells us what that means. What does it mean to add value? Are there more ways to add value? And then everyone kind of operates with this understanding or this idea that value has to be in the form of delivering more information. And so what happens is we get stuck in this information overload. We start teaching so many different things. We provide really great content, really good steps, really good information. And then no one seems to pay attention because we sound like the same as everyone else, or the audience perceives us to be the same as everyone else. So you start to do a tutorial titled How to Lose 10 Pounds, or how to build a landing page, or how to do downward dog, or how to do whatever it may be. And then everyone else, all your competitors, start to title the same thing because everyone is following the same narrative and the same advice. I haven't seen anyone, and it doesn't mean no one else is doing it, but I personally haven't seen anyone else talking about different ways to add value. And I started to realize and think like, well, obviously we do, but I started to realize we only do it inside of our program. If you're in our program, like obviously you hear us talk about it, but I don't think I've really talked about it upfront in our upfront content, like our podcast and Instagram and things like that. And so what I wanted to do, especially as you gear up for Master Your Messaging, our 3-day live event, is talk about 5 different ways in which you can add value into someone's life. And this is 5 different ways you can add value to your audience's life without having to depend on educational content. Now, again, I still think we need educational content. This doesn't mean we shouldn't be using it. It just means that we shouldn't be doing it 100% of the time, and we shouldn't be doing it as our sole default focus or intention when it comes to adding value into someone's life. And I want you to think, and let's just run you through an exercise. Think of someone that you would say has changed your life for the better. Could be a mentor, a spouse, a really great friend, aunt, uncle, family member, parents. It could be anyone, but someone who's really helped you. And I want to ask you about the ways in which they helped you. When you look back at all the different ways that they've helped you, the ways that they've made you feel, and they've made a really profound positive impact in your life, was it because they gave you more information and tutorials over and over and over again? I'm willing to bet they have given you and shared some of their wisdom and some of their educational stuff and taught you some really cool lessons and great lessons. But I'm also willing to bet they've done other things to add value besides delivering information to you. And one of the ways that I look at messaging, or I discover more things about messaging, is I just look at my own experience. I look at, why am I best friends with this person? How did I form an automatic connection with this person? How did this book make me feel? How did that piece of copy make me want to click on it? And I just start to question all of these things and how I felt and what my experience has been. And then it just uncovers gold. But so many people don't uncover the things like that. And so when we look at those sort of experiences that you had in your life, that you felt automatic connection or support or value from someone, what way do those show up? How are they adding that value into your life? And as you start to look at your own experience, you can probably go beyond the 5 things that I'm even going to teach you today. And if you know that you're experiencing someone else or some sort of scenario or a piece of copy a certain way, then you know it's probably going to happen to your audience if you're able to replicate exactly what that person was doing. And so that's how I came up with a lot of the things that we're going to talk about here today. Is I just started to look around, like, how do I feel when someone else does X, Y, and Z? Or how did someone else get me to feel X, Y, and Z without delivering more information to me? And I was like, I got it. Maybe it's they validated me, or they helped me remove a mistake, or we've bonded through some sort of connection. So I felt like I wasn't in a situation alone anymore, or they validated some of my beliefs, or whatever it may be, right? There's different things that are going to happen with your friends and your family and different experiences that you have with people. And if you can replicate that in your content, in your messaging, it becomes very, very powerful. So let's not waste any time, and let's just dive straight into what those things are. So the very first one, again, if you've been in my circle for any amount of time, is probably not going to be a very big surprise to you. But number one is shifting someone's perspective. This does not mean making someone right or wrong and making you right. This simply means identifying a belief or a perspective that someone has, and a belief and a perspective that's actually causing a problem in their life that they're unaware of, and making them aware of it. So let me run you guys through a couple examples here. The most common one that I use all the time is, and in fact, that this whole episode is a little bit of a perspective shifting episode in itself. It's a little bit of a thought reversal. But the very first thing that I want to talk about is shifting people's perspective. The very first example that I want to talk about is how I shift people's perspective, and been doing it with a theme that has worked really well for us over the last 4 years, which is the idea or the perspective or the belief in our industry is that how-to content is how to build an audience online, that adding value and giving your best stuff away for free is how to build a business online. But I started to realize, you know what? That's not actually all you need to do anymore. Maybe it was 5 years ago, but right now in today's day and age, it actually causes people to remain stuck and unheard. And I recognize that. And I started to realize, well, people have this one perspective, this one way of looking at it, and they don't question it. They just keep doing it because that's what everyone is telling them to do. Every guru, 90%, maybe even more of the experts out there are telling them to do this one thing. And it just is keeping a lot of them stuck and unheard. So I first recognized, okay, here is a belief or perspective that is actually causing a problem in people's life, and most people are not aware of it. So now what I can do is I can start to create content like thought reversals, are great perspective shifting content and tools and messaging tools that you can use. And so inside our program, we have like 3 or 4 different ways you can do it. I actually have one way that's completely free that you can follow on YouTube. Also, we have a podcast episode. If you go through our podcast, all about thought reversals, they will dive deep into how to shift someone's perspective. But the easiest way to shift someone's perspective is not to talk about what they should do that's better. You have to understand if someone has a perspective, if someone has a belief, that's hardwired in their head as the right, quote unquote, right thing to do. And simply just saying this way's better doesn't remove the belief that they have. And so what you have to do is your messaging, your communication should be focused on revealing the flaws in that perspective, the flaws in that belief that they weren't seeing before, they weren't aware of before. So for me, I always use the example of like, well, let's look at Gary Vaynerchuk. He doesn't rely on tutorials and more information. He does something different. People are like, oh my God, that's right. Then I use like a metaphor, or you can use an analogy where I say like encyclopedias that have great information are never the top of the best-selling charts, but books that shift people's perspective are. And so now what I'm doing is I'm finding examples that are the opposite of the belief or their perspective that someone is holding. So first, identify the belief or the perspective that they have that is causing pain and a problem in their life. And then what I do is I find examples or metaphors or analogies that show the flaws in that perspective. I show and reveal the flaws, and I discredit the belief and the perspective they have. So I show the flaws in the belief and the perspective that they hold. And what that does is doesn't come off as salesy or offensive or this really weird energy where I'm trying to be right and make you wrong. I'm simply just saying, have you thought of these things before? Have you realized this before? That's like doing X, Y, and Z. And what that does is it allows the person to come to their own conclusion on their own without me forcing it, without me trying to be right. They come to their own conclusion that perspective or belief is actually flawed. Maybe it's not the best way. And then at that time, I can move into what that solution may be. And so the first part of this, again, is shifting someone's perspective. If they see an angle or something one way and it's causing a problem, you can start to get them to see it a different way. And another example of this that I use all the time is if someone has this idea that we have to hustle until our eyeballs bleed in order to be successful. All I have to say is, well, have you ever realized have you ever realized that not everyone who works hard becomes successful? Have you ever realized that there's a lot of people that really work hard and never become successful? It's like, oh my gosh, I never believed that before. I've just been hustling because that's what everyone tells me to do. And so they have this perspective that if I just hustle harder, work harder, then I will be successful. And there's obviously flaws in that thinking as well. And so that's one way in which we can add value into someone's life is we make them aware of things that they weren't aware of before, things that are causing problems in their life. Now that's going to lead me to number two. Number 1 and 2 kind of go hand in hand. Number 2 is actually removing mistakes or having them stop making mistakes instead of giving them something to do. So it's making them aware of a mistake that's causing a problem in their life and getting them to stop doing that. I'm a firm believer that everyone has to be doing this. You absolutely, if you want to have like the world's best program, or you want to have the best program in your space, or you just want to deliver the best results to your clients, is you have to identify the most common mistakes that they're making that are causing the problem. You have to identify the mistakes that are causing them to need your program in the first place. And you have to understand what those are, because if you just focus on, hey, let me deliver you the best steps, let me give you the best information, let me just be the best teacher and just teach, but they still keep making the mistakes that caused the problem in the first place, well, they're not going to see results the fastest they possibly can inside of your program. It's impossible. And there's a story that I like to tell, and if you've been around my circle for a while, you've definitely heard this story before, but the story goes like this. And this is actually a true story. And I know I've told that on the podcast a few times, but I ran track and cross country in high school. I started running freshman year of track. I tried out for baseball, didn't make the team, and went to track. And what do you know? Track ended up being my sport that I did for the next 8 years. And which is really funny because I hated running, learned to love it over time. But one of the things with running, especially when you're racing, is that you have shoes for training and you have shoes for racing. So if you're on the track, they're called spikes, race spikes, and they're really lightweight shoes that have spikes in the front part of them. And then if you're running like cross country, you have flats. And if you're running a marathon, it's a little bit more, it's kind of like a flat, but it's a little thicker with a little bit more support. But the point is it's still lighter than the shoe that you train in. So obviously you want your trainers to have the most amount of padding as possible and support as possible. So the shoe naturally is just going to be a lot heavier. Now, when you race, you go to the lighter shoe, and in a mile, if you race in your trainers, you're going to be around 10 seconds slower on your time. Usually, obviously it's going to be a little off for every person in every race, but let's just call it 10 seconds. Okay. So 10 to 15 seconds is what you're going to shave off by not racing in your trainers and racing in actual spikes. So if I had someone who came to me and was like, Brandon, I keep running like 5:10, 5:15. Can you help me break the 5-minute mile? I can't figure out what I need to do. I can give them all the training plans, the diet plans, all the stretches, all the exercise, and I can have them go train really, really hard. But if I realized that they were running in trainers, all I have to do is go up to them and say, hey, did you realize that you shouldn't be running and racing in trainers? Stop doing that. Don't do that anymore. Wear spikes. So I made them aware of a mistake. I said, stop doing this one thing. And by having them stop to do this one thing, guess what? Their very next race, they could go break that 5-minute mile. It's a very possible thing now because they stopped making the mistake. And the best part about it is now they don't have to go do all those exercises that I was going to have them do. They don't have to go train harder. They don't have to like get on some crazy, exercise or workout plan or anything like that. Strengthening plan, which by the way, yes, if you're a runner, you should be doing conditioning and weight training and all that stuff as well. They don't have to do any of that stuff. So they get the result faster. And then if they decided to go ahead and do the things that they needed to do, like train harder, eat right, do some strength conditioning and things like that, and they stopped making the mistake, guess what? Not only did they break the 5-minute mile, but now they're running like 4:50, 4:45. And so this is the same thing with your audience, is that they are making mistakes that cause the problems. There's two reasons why problems exist in their life. Either they're making mistakes that cause the problem and they don't know it, or they're not doing something that they should be doing that is causing the problem. Those are usually the two reasons why problems exist inside of your audience's life. So if they're making mistakes that are causing the problem and you know what they are, you can actually create content that is designed to show them what those mistakes are and have them stop doing it. So it could be things like 5 mistakes that are causing your content to remain unheard, 5 mistakes that stop content from being super engaging, 5 mistakes that are going to stop engaging content, 5 mistakes that are going to stop your ads from converting. The number one mistake that you have to get rid of in order to have $1 million launch. Like, these are all great content topics that have that are not like the how-to based. They have nothing to do with delivering information, like how-to information. They are delivering information, but it's awareness raising information to get you to stop making mistakes. So again, and the nice thing about it is now even your titles are now going to be against the grain and standing out more because you're using the mistake title versus the how-to title. So that's number 2, is a removal of mistakes. Make them aware of mistakes that they're making. And I'll be honest with you, like, having kids, has been a big blessing. It's been really hard, but it's been a big blessing as well. I'm a firm believer that having kids is one of the best, one of the worst decisions you can make. If you're someone who values freedom and going off and doing things when you want, how you want, if you're someone who doesn't want to like clean up barf at 2 a.m. or get pooped on or spit up on, if that's the type of person you are, which I would assume is probably everyone, having a kid means you're definitely going to experience those things. But at the same time, having kids has been the biggest blessing in my life, because it's also been the fastest growth I've seen in my personal development. It's been, it's just a constant every day. You have to ground yourself. You have to overcome your triggers. You have to do all of that stuff. And, it's been the biggest blessing also because you get to experience love that you never experienced before. But I will tell you, when people choose to be kid-free, I 100% understand and I get it, because it's effing hard and it will disrupt your life. And here's the other thing, And kind of going off on a rant or a tangent now. And if you have kids in the car, I probably should have warned you to to turn this episode off or pause it or whatever, but you can definitely do it now because they may not enjoy what I'm about to say next. But the other thing that kind of cracks me up is like, because I have friends that don't have kids, and one of the things they ask me is like, do you think we should have kids and blah blah blah? And I'm like, you know what? If you even have to ask that question, the answer is probably no, but make your own decision. Either there's benefits and there's downsides of either way you want to go, but there is no right or wrong decision. But one of the things I say, because sometimes people get thrown off and it's like, oh, Brandon, how can having kids be one of the worst things that you make decisions you make? And I always tell them, one of the things that I say is like, let's just put it this way. If you had a friend who treated you the way your kids treat you, you would call that friend an asshole and you would not be friends with that person. Just straight up. Like there's no arguing against that. That's like a universal truth in my reality. In my mind, if you had a friend that treated you the same way that your kids treat you, like expected you to clean up their throw up in the middle of the night, yelled at you when you won't give them a piece of candy, or you just won't be friends with that person. So that's one of the things with kids as well. As I say, it's kind of one of the worst decisions because you have to like deal with a lot of that stuff. But again, the pendulum swings equal on both sides. You get to experience the best of both worlds. And you can always look at those hard times as growth opportunities, which makes parenting, one of the best things it can be one of the best things that you ever do. And for me, it's been one of the biggest blessings because it's been a great motivator for me to be an entrepreneur, to go through those really hard times. It causes me to be the best role model that I can be. Just the idea that my kids can look at me one day and say, Dad, how come you don't live your own advice? Why don't you tell us we can be anything? Why aren't you doing that? And that's to me the biggest motivator. And my kids gave that blessing to me. Becoming a parent gave me that giant blessing. And every day I become a better and a better person, a better father, better entrepreneur, better human being, because I'm constantly working on those triggers that they do, grounding myself, keeping myself calm. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but here's the reason why I brought this up. Is when I look back at how I've been raising my kids and how I've added value in their life, there are certain things that I teach them. I teach them how to do certain things, like tie their shoes, how to play baseball, how to work on the computer, typing. There are things that I tell them to do. But some of the most impactful things that I get an immediate reaction on is actually helping them realize mistakes that they made. Now, let me just say one thing. I don't prevent them from making mistakes. I'm a firm believer that they need to fall down. They need to do things where they could possibly get hurt and they need to learn. They need to make mistakes. I want to just go on the record. I don't think having them avoid mistakes is the best thing. However, when they continue to make a mistake and they don't see it, bringing that to their awareness or their attention has been some of the most impactful sort of advice that I've given my kids. And this goes back to what number 2 is helping your audience stop making mistakes, because the problem is they don't realize that they're mistakes. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing them. If your audience knew that those things were mistakes, then they wouldn't be freaking doing it. But they do anyways, because they don't realize that. And so when I look back at my kids and they are doing something over and over and over again, and they haven't connected the dots, I help them connect the dots. And that's some of the most impactful things that I think I've ever done for my kids is that sort of stuff versus the teaching. Here's how to do X, Y, and Z. So obviously you have to teach them some things, like tie your shoes, the potty training, all that stuff. We're in the middle of potty training, our last one right now. So that's why it's the first thing in my mind. But there's two sides of things that you want to do with your kids, and the same thing with your audience. We still want those tutorials and that education, but we have to make them aware of mistakes at the same time. Okay. This goes, again, all of these play into each other. So number 3 is raise their awareness or explain things that have been unexplained to them in the past. This basically is explaining to them why certain things happen and when they have no idea why those things are happening. So let me give you an example. I think the holistic psychologist, if anyone follows her, is a master of raising awareness and explaining the unexplained. One of the posts that I talk about a lot is she had this one post one time that said 5 behavior traits in adults that suffer from childhood trauma. And so she goes through these symptoms or these traits. I call them symptoms or problems, but these traits that people have when you have high childhood trauma. And basically what happens is as you consume her content, you start to go, oh, I have that trait. I have trait number 2. Don't have trait number 3, but I have trait number 4. Don't have number 5. But what starts to happen is you start to go, I have that trait. But the way she framed and positioned the content is if you have these traits, you are suffering from childhood trauma. So now what happens is I recognize, oh, wow, I have trait number 1. Oh my gosh, that comes from childhood trauma. I have childhood trauma. So she got me to self-diagnose myself. But really what she did is she explained the unexplained. No one has explained to me that this symptom was a result of childhood trauma. And it allows me to come to my own conclusion that I have childhood trauma. She didn't have to convince me. She didn't have to explain it to me like in a tutorial. She didn't have to tell me that like my beliefs of why these problems exist was wrong. And here's what the real answer is. She just said, look, here's out of my practice, here's 5 traits that I've seen for people that have childhood trauma. And then you start to self-recognize, oh my God, I have the trait, which then your mind goes, I suffer from childhood trauma. And that's incredibly value adding. And so, I told the story, my wife had some health issues in 2020. Well, I mean, her whole life, she's always had to take naps and stuff like that just to get through the day. And she had some autoimmune issues. We didn't realize it until one day she went to a doctor, and the doctor started to explain like, hey, when you have this symptom, it could be a result of autoimmune issues. And we're like, okay, we never knew that. I didn't know what an autoimmune issue was. I didn't know anything. And you're kind of describing our traits. Maybe we have it. They explained something to us we've never been explained. And then they went further and said, well, here's what usually causes autoimmune issues and the inflammation and these types of foods and all of this stuff. We should get allergy testing and do all this. And we went through this whole process and she doesn't have to take naps anymore. She has the most energy she's ever felt in her life. But the point is before they ever explained to us how to fix the problem, they made us aware of what the issue even was in the first place. And your audience right now, you have to understand they have problems and they have mistakes. That's why they're going to buy from you. And they're doing things that cause those problems and mistakes, and they don't know that those mistakes are causing the problem. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. So if you can raise their awareness to that issue, if you can explain the unexplainable to them or the thing that's never been explained to them before, it's incredibly value adding. Okay, so that's number 3. So let's kind of cover the first 3 that we've gone so far or through so far. It's shift your perspective, help them remove or stop mistakes. And it's to raise their awareness or explain the unexplained. Those are the first three things. Again, they all kind of go hand in hand, or there's some overlap in how to do it, but they are separate and different. Inside our program, we go through all 3 of these, but we also talk about number 4. Number 4 is being relevant to their current situation and making them feel heard. Now, making them feel heard doesn't necessarily mean you're going to sit there with every audience member and go, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. And I'm sorry. Like maybe if you're doing a one-on-one coaching session or something like that, validating the emotions, holding that space is really important. But the question becomes, how do we do that for an entire population or an entire audience of 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people? And basically what it is getting very clear on who you serve, what their problems are, what are their specific mistakes causing those problems, what are the specific things they're doing to try to fix those problems that don't work. And what we start to do is through our content, we start to demonstrate we understand your situation. I understand you're dealing with this specific problem. I know you're making this specific mistake. I know you have tried this thing here, and I know that you're feeling this emotion and this emotion and this emotion. And when you can get specific, but specific in a way where it's still relevant to a wide range of people, they start to feel heard because they start to feel like you understand their unique situation. And that's one of the biggest problems is that when you speak and you talk, for most people, the audience sometimes can't see how that's relevant to their certain situation. They can't integrate the concept you're talking about to their specific scenario. And that's a big problem because it starts to develop this lack of trust in their own ability to be able to be successful with your method. However, what I've found is that when we're completely relevant to their pain, to their emotions, why the pain exists, we explain the unexplained, we start to become hyper relevant to their unwanted specific scenario or situation, but they also start to feel heard. And that's the most important thing. Start to be heard. I'm going to use the kid example again. One of the best things that I've learned to do with my children over the last couple of years is to not, when they're like misbehaving or not listening or throwing a tantrum or whatever it may be, some of the best things I've done is not to come down and be that authority figure of do it now, do it because I'm your dad and do it, blah, 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 but to simply ask them, what is going on? I see that you are, and I just repeat back the specifics of what I'm seeing. I see that you're really upset and you're really upset at your sister. And it is very difficult to have your like Pokemon cards ripped apart. I would be really upset too. So again, it's getting very specific on what just happened, ripped up the Pokemon cards. I see that you're upset, your sister. I covered all the specifics, validated the emotion. I would be upset too. And they start to feel heard and understood. And what's quote unquote magically starts to happen with your kids is that they start to calm down. They start to build some sort of rapport with you. Start to build some rapport with them. And guys, it's the same thing with your audience. If you can accurately describe the scenario they're going through, be clear on the problems you solve, why those problems exist, what the emotions are, validate the emotions, maybe share a story of how you went through a very similar thing, they start to feel heard and understood. They start to feel like you get them. And I think a lot of people, and sometimes this will take vulnerability, but I think a lot of people avoid the vulnerability because they want to be seen as an authority. So what happens is you start to focus on a lot of educational content. Let me teach you. Let me be the authority. I can't show any flaws. I can't be vulnerable. But being vulnerable, if done in the right way, allows them to feel heard and understood by you. It makes you hyper relevant to them. And it also increases their trust in your ability to solve the problem because now they know you've been through it and you've come out on the other side. And so there's so many people that just won't show the vulnerability, but the vulnerability allows you to be relevant and allows them to be heard. And it's one of the most powerful things that we've been able to do. And we've been really taking advantages over the last 2 to 3 years and just getting clear on what are those emotions? What are those mistakes? What are those problems? And yeah, that's going to take a lot of testing. It will take testing to uncover what those are. But when you can uncover it, and a lot of people come into the program, they're just like, bro, I just feel like you're a real person, Brandon. Like I just really connect with you and I feel understood by you and I feel heard by you. And I even had people tell me like, it's weird. I feel heard by you, even though we've never had a one-on-one conversation. And I just look at them and smile and I go, I know that was intentional. I wanted you to feel heard. And if you're listening, I want you to feel heard. I know what it's like to be really good at something and have skills and knowledge in something, try to put it out in the world and no one listening. I know how frustrating it is to put a course together that you can help people and it just doesn't sell. I know how frustrating it feels like when you're like a really good coach and you just think like, if someone could watch me coach, then they're going to buy, they would obviously buy my program. I just can't communicate it. I know what all of that feels like because I was there. I know what it's like to bang my head against the wall for 2 years, 3 years, feeling like a failure, feeling like everyone else got it easier. I know what it's like to be mad at the universe because you can help people and you just want to help them. I know what that feels like. I've been there and I know that you're going through it. And I'll be honest with you, it sucks. It really sucks. I get it. And I want that to come through in my messaging. I want all of that stuff to come through because again, it builds relevancy and allows you, the audience member, to be heard. It allows everything they're going through to be validated. And I think a lot of the problems that people will get to is you get into this cycle of just, it's like a self downward spiral where you're like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I will never make it. And it's like, no, you always will. You just have to figure out the right way to communicate it. You have to figure out what the right offer is. You just have to go through a process of learning. So that's number 4. Number 4 is relevancy and being heard. And there's more. I'm going to go through the last one here in a second, but just so you know, there are more. There's things like entertainment. You can be entertaining, stuff like that. There's also like even education is another way to add value. And there's like a ton of different ways to educate without it being tutorials. But the last one that I think is also really important is connection. So connection is really important, especially if it's tied to your deeper purpose, because it's going to make people feel like they are a part of something bigger than themselves. So for me, connection videos can sometimes be classified, or some people who don't know any better will classify them as motivational or inspirational videos. But they're not designed just to motivate and inspire. They're actually designed to connect. So this is you talking about your deeper purpose. This is you talking about your dharma, why you do what you do. This is not you talking about the result you bring. So an example would be if I'm a copywriter, I would say, I help people write impactful copy. That's my why. It's like, no, that's a result. A result of working with you is I now get to write impactful copy. What I'm more interested in is when 10,000 people are writing impactful copy, what effect is now created in the world? That is your why. That is your deeper purpose. That is your connection. Because what happens is when people love your brand, they connect with you, your content's on fire, it's crushing it. And then you inject this connection piece, people automatically start to go, I like this person. This person makes a lot of sense to me. I really resonate with this person. And so what we do in our connection content is we talk about your deeper purpose. We talk about your beliefs. We release values, things like that. I remember when we were working with Caitlin Batcher a couple of years ago, one of the best pieces of content we did with her was titled How Entrepreneurs Make the Best Parents. Or no, that wasn't it. It was Why Kids Should Be Taught Entrepreneurship. That's what it was. And again, she teaches how to evergreen your courses and your programs. But teaching kids entrepreneurship has nothing to do with evergreening. But that was her belief, and she knew that her audience would also connect with it and support it. And it gets her audience to go like, I really like Caitlin and what she stands for. Caitlin doesn't stand for evergreening. She stands for let's evergreen so you get more time back. So you can work, you spend more time with your family. You can teach entrepreneurship to kids. We can focus on the next generation. We can teach them to be happier. So that's her deeper purpose. Her deeper purpose is that. And that's why people, when they get into her program, they feel like they're a part of this bigger, deeper purpose. And that's what connection is all about, making people feel like that you connect with them, that you have a friendship or a relationship with them, that they are a part of the message, that they are a part of the community that you have going on. They feel like they're a piece of something. And that is a huge value add to anyone. So let's go through all 5 again. Those are the 5 ways that you can add value without relying on education. So number 1 is shifting perspective. Number 2 is removing or helping them stop mistakes. Number 3 is raising their awareness of those mistakes in the first place, or explaining the unexplained to them. Number 5 is being hyper relevant, making them feel heard. And that was number 4. Number 5 is connection. Now, all of this can be done through certain types of content. So for us, we personally, in our philosophy, relies on 4 quadrants of content. So number 1 is going to be that educational authority. Number 2 is going to be that thought reversal. Number 3 is going to be connection. And number 4 is what we call diagnosing or self-identifying content. When all 4 of these are done correctly, you actually achieve all 5 of these. And when you have all 5 of these things working together inside of like a webinar or an ad, your thing's going to be on fire. And so for us, we write and create really great ads, but our best ads usually will have one or multiple of these 5 things in the ad working together. Our best performing webinars usually have all 5 of these working together. We have all 5 of these inside of a webinar. And then our content is using a lot of these as well. Okay. So that's how you can start to add value without relying on educational content. If a lot of this makes sense and you really like it, well, make sure you attend. I know we're going to have some ads playing pretty soon. You might have already seen one or heard one inside this podcast episode, but all you need to do is go to brandonlucero.com/MYP p.m. Master Your Profitable Messaging. We have a 3-day event coming up. Again, you're going to get an ad for it here in a second as well if you're listening to the audio version. But if you want to learn how to integrate all this stuff, how to uncover all of this stuff, we're doing one big last launch with the Master Your Profitable Messaging. And our program will open up at the end of that, and we will help you craft all of this. So get ready for that. Again, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I've been loving all these messaging related podcast episodes we've been doing this week. We have a couple more coming your way. Feel free to always send me a DM if you have any questions. If you want to just let me know what your favorite episode was, and we always love to see those reviews on iTunes. So if you have not left us a review, you've been a listener of the podcast, my only ask for you is just to go do that now. I'd be so grateful, and I love reading them. So head over to iTunes, leave us a review, and I will talk to you all next week. Take care. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.